as I see it, there are three main questions that remain to be answered in this proposed ordinance. And so let's just work through those one at a time. So number one, and this may be the toughest issue, is what should the dimensional figures be regarding the size of mooring fields and the square footage allotted for each watercraft? And I encourage you folks to think about that. Does anyone come up with some bright ideas?
I've got ideas and thoughts that if we want to look at that, but can you, if you wouldn't mind, can you lay out the three topics first, and then
Okay.
we can go back to that.
Sure. So that's number one. What should the dimensional figures be regarding the size of mooring fields and the square footage allotted for each watercraft? And there are places in the ordinance where we just need to plug in numbers. Number two is who should serve as the appellate body under the ordinance. So if our harbor master makes a decision that someone disagrees with, what's their recourse? And so the attorney said the zoning board of appeals could be assigned this responsibility. It is in other communities. Alternatively, it could be the town council. There are pros and cons to each of those options. And so, but ultimately, that's y'all's call to make. And then number three, our attorney included a note in what you have before you that the law requires 10% of moorings be allocated for non-residential, non-commercial purposes, which we knew. And then under the law, another 10% for non-residential commercial purposes. And our attorney believes that latter part is meant for commercial fishermen in coastal waters. So it wouldn't really apply here. I previously emailed the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Department on whether we must include that provision in our ordinance. And looking back over this again, I realized I got an initial response that we'll get back to you, and I haven't gotten a response since. So I just emailed them to say, still waiting on an answer to that. But that would be an easy thing to either not include or plug in there, if depending upon what their answer is.
Would a service boat constitute a commercial use?
It's a good question. And again, our attorney's opinion is it probably that probably is meant for commercial fishing as opposed to anything else.
Which means that we don't have to say this.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, if his interpretation is correct, that then as the ordinance is proposed right now, we'd be covered.
So commercial boat, you don't want to be classified as a houseboat, a rental, right? You want to make sure you want to keep rentals out of it.
I think what Anthony's saying.
I'm just saying, if someone, you could see where an LLC for a boat, a houseboat would be commercial.
Yeah.
But can I use 10%?
Is the houseboat ordinance still on the table?
So it's in purgatory right now because the legislature has a committee that's studying that issue in particular, because it's become such a topic of discussion across the state that they're looking at legislation to regulate houseboats on inland waters
From a state level.
from a state level.
So to that point, we not need to include the houseboat.
I don't think we do at this point because inevitably, if we do that, we're going to end up having to come back and amend it depending upon what the state law will be. Assuming that the legislature acts.
So does that leave us open to whether it's commercial or not? Does it leave it open to a houseboat meaning to be moored there? I mean, should we put some verbiage in about no houseboats?
Yeah, I just don't know if that would pass legal muster at this point, though, Lynn. And that was the attorney's concern. He didn't want to move forward on something that's just going to get struck down by the courts, and particularly if we know that legislation is on the near horizon. So let's go back to question number one, which again I think is the toughest question that we have here, and that is the dimensional figures regarding the size of mooring fields and the square footage allotted for each craft. And let me find in the ordinance where we speak to that.
That's a question, but is this ordinance being defined or developed so someone can propose a mooring field?
Correct.
So wouldn't someone have to come to and present their position on how they want to position this?
You know what, that's a
Do we
good,
need to define it?
you know what, that's a good point, because ultimately the town council will make that decision, so maybe we just let the council decide that on a case-by-case basis.
When they have to
What-
fulfill these
So we
requirements.
just define the
This is
boundary.
this is the exact point I was gonna bring before we got too far down discussion on this too, because each, to your point on the application for this being anywhere that somebody can ask for. You can't define it. And I thought about this a little bit too, as I read through what we have here. I like what's there, but I think what we need to do is strengthen that paragraph a little bit to say that actual dimensions, and have this here so that they see that there's a recognition around the fact that an approval around any application is gonna have a siting consideration, and how many should be there, how that's gonna have an effect, what's the surrounding impacts associated with this decision to allow a mooring in this location, parking, all of those things, so dimensions, I think, should fall in. When we get to this discussion, I was talking to Mike a little bit just prior to, because this was also as we know, if this mooring ordinance does go through, and recognizing that we need to define swing radiuses and number of mooring balls that are gonna be associated in an actual dimensional area, wherever that might sit. There is gonna be this, as Dwight said, an application process. And then an approval type process, and it's really the applicant that's gonna bring that to the table to say these things, and I think what we've tried to do in the mooring ordinance also is to define to an applicant what's important. You know, of considerations, and laying out some minimal, realistic regulations that we feel that are gonna need to be complied with wherever any mooring field might be sited. So I too, Dwight, getting back to your point directly, is I think we don't define the square feet and the number, and you can have kind of maybe it's best to have, maybe in discussion tonight, a certain amount of understanding as to what would be a minimum swing radius is important to me. So that you can cite how many moorings can go in a certain location, if you follow where I'm going with that. So I'll use the example of this. I was saying to Mike, most mooring balls are set, and then you've got a tie line off it, let's call it 5 feet, 4 to 5 feet, right? So there's the mooring ball, there's your tie line that's adding 5 feet. Then you gotta look at an average boat size. What's an average boat size out there today? Or if you wanna choose an average boat size as a way to try to create a minimal standard.
22 to 22 foot.
Yeah, and Mike and I were saying, I've seen 30-foot barges out there, but I think 25, I said 25 feet. So then just realistically, really quickly, you take 5 feet of your tie line off your ball, plus 25 of the boat. So now you got a 30-foot distance. So then you could say, I think personally, I'll put it out there, I think the swing distance should be somewhere between 5 and 8 feet. Depending of calmer waters and how rough and where you might set and so forth. It could be 10 feet. Somebody might argue and say, hey, I want a 10-foot space between that final swing radius.
We could just draw a swing circle.
That's exactly what I would do.
30 plus 10.
So I'm now up to 5 and 25 on the boat, I'm 30, so let's just say worst case scenario, you want a 10-foot swing radius, so now you're 40 feet.
Okay, so.
So now every mooring ball is gonna be 40 feet. Mooring ball's 40 feet. That's starting to define how many you could set in a certain area.
4 boats in a square at 40 feet is 1,600 square feet.
There you go. So you can come up with a minimalist, something who might be the applicants who are deciding. You know, have we defined kind of where that is? The application goes in, who's gonna decide fully? is that, we'll get to that in a minute, but getting back to kind of the dimensions of what we're talking about. I think maybe we could either provide minimal standards in our ordinance, coming back and leaving our ordinance, mooring fields shall be no smaller than XXX, because we're leaving it open. But then down below, we're gonna state that minimally they'd be this, if we want to. And considerations, not meeting minimal can be considered at an application process. That's again, allowing a lot of flexibility when a different applicant comes in a different body of water to.
You're gonna have a different sizing on each one. of the-
Exactly.
Exactly. You've got the south end of Maranacook, you've got the new boat landing at Annabescook, which is kind of wide open. Yep. Right, and then the little Annabescook Road down by that beach is very small.
And we've talked about, just as a kind of we already know it's not a location that is very attractive. But maybe somebody could
But
is
there's a
look
more-
at Narrows Pond
There's a mooring
boat
field
launch
there,
right
right,
now. Right,
on down by the pit.
no, I'm talking the,
Right,
In
but
between.
so there's a more field, that we said, and that's by the beach.
Yeah, down by off Annabescook Road.
Where it's been-
Down by the old pit.
By the drive, the investment people.
Remember who lived down there, Steve Amber? It's right before his house, his old house,
That dirt road that goes down the pits, but
this dirt road as you turn,
And there's the.
drive.
Yeah. yeah.
So Annabescook Road,
Turn left after the tracks and then.
all those houses have moorings down.
Yeah, so.
But they're all in front of the house, right?
Yeah,
No,
they're off
no,
the
it's
beach,
a little
they're-
more field, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been growing.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that.
And then so we establishing that they were gonna be near the public boat landing, those are the areas we were focusing on, correct?
Is, who's that beach public or is it
I think it's private,
a private?
But there is a boat launch down there.
yeah,
But they have to have access.
and I don't really know how.
So regardless of if they're there or they're not there, getting back to the ordinance component piece of it, though. Is if there's gonna be an application process that is defined by this ordinance. There's gonna need to be an application process, and those people would be included if they're not in front of their
Find
homes.
that square footage and define the swing.
So I guess I'm trying to get us back on track with regards to at least the ordinance, if there are these pseudo. Mooring fields out there, and we could probably find a lot of them and establish them, but this is what this ordinance should be here and written to address.
Right.
In equitableness.
Yeah.
Across all moorings.
I suppose it's not gonna be legal to limit the size of a boat. If we determine the swing.
I think you gotta go 25 feet.
This is why I think what you could do, Lynn, is as I gave that example, one of the things we could say as a minimal standard. Is we want X between the swings. If you're putting a 30-foot barge on there. Then that's gonna shift the mooring fields as to where those locations are. Because we're gonna GPS the anchors, I would assume, is how we're gonna
Yes.
establish it. Is, well, I guess this would be another thing, that the town should consider GPSing. Where the balls are, so that you have an idea as to where they should be, and if the ball has shifted or moved. There's maintenance to move it back and so forth, all those things are gonna happen.
I think
You gotta maintain a certain amount, so maybe the thing is, I guess I'm convincing myself. Maybe we should, I'll put out on the table, maybe there should be a minimal. Distance between. End of swing radius. And the next,
Yeah, well, I think if you pick a 30-foot, 25-foot boat, 5 foot, that means you have that's a 30-foot radius, you draw a swing surface, you need to have 60 feet from one side to the other side.
Well, they're all gonna swing in the same direction.
They're all gonna swing, but you still can't have overlapping for whatever, you know.
Whatever is that, yeah.
There are, I know in one of the previous regulations or ordinance we looked at, there's reference to an industry standard, right?
yeah, I think there is, Dwight, and like I said, I wanted to give us. I don't. That's why I was trying to give us the distance between, because if you've got a 30-foot barge on one and somebody else got a 12-foot dinghy. Then you can, if you have a crowded mooring site, you could shift those balls.
But that's up to the applicant.
Exactly, I agree.
What we've got to do is define the parameters that they have to meet. And so Barbara's brought up a good point. Do we keep it at 25 feet from the shoreline? Or can we carve out those locations and say in front of private property?
Well, I think in
you've
front
got-
of property should be.
Right, right.
Wait a second, so. Right now it says at no closer than 25 feet.
Right.
So if you want to make it more open-ended, where the council can consider each individual case, in the case of what's down on the south end of Maranacook, they may say, oh, well, we want 100 feet. Let's just pick a nice round number. So simply because it says no closer than 25 feet doesn't necessarily mean 25 feet. It just means you're not going to be any closer than that. And then whoever proposes something, the council may say, well, we don't want this any closer
But
than.
can we protect the,
Yeah, I think-
by saying no closer than 25 feet and no closer than 100 feet in front of a residence?
I think that's substantial infringement on shorefront property.
But is it?
Only if the council approves that.
Yes.
Right.
I mean,
You could, I mean, you could, I'm just pointing out that if you're wanting to make it open-ended, I don't know that you necessarily need to get all that specific about it.
I think we have to afford some protections to
I
property.
do too,
Okay.
I do too. I
Because
agree.
this ordinance talks about you have to have public access.
Right.
And so, right now, there's no acknowledgement to the private property that's gonna be infringed on.
So under mooring field regulations.
So, but I take your statement though, White, is, in that example. If this is we're only gonna approve. The ordinance is only gonna approve a mooring application. That has the legal rights to place that grid.
Right, so you're protecting the property.
State law prevails on the rest.
So if an approval was made where that applicant or applicants didn't have permission from a property owner where that grid was identified as being located,
But they
It-
have.
it can't get
access,
approved.
and they can- But if they have public access and all we have is a 25-foot setback. From the property owner to the mooring. Then. I mean, I guess whoever's gonna be enforcing this may not have understood the intent of this committee and this document, so. I really feel like if.
25 feet for this way, Lynn, or
So this,
out towards
so
the
just
water?
let's say North First Point. okay?
Yeah,
You got the docks here, and then you've got the two properties there.
yeah,
It should be 100 feet out. Before that mooring field can start.
and what, in the case of, if the matter here is also trying to address a potential of the existing mooring field that's down there when they come to be the applicant, if we're addressing that type of a situation right now, I think what we haven't gotten to, but we were starting to have the discussion, is that the placement of any sort of mooring field that might come to application in the location of this North Cross Point and town boat landing and property owners' concerns that we would be addressing in that property owners' concerns where we place the grid if there is another alternative in this location. If I was a member to approve this, I would be considering minimal impacts and no impacts on the property and private owner if there's an alternative to place a grid with an applicant of the number of mooring balls.
So if the intent is to protect private property owners, we've got no closer than 25 linear feet to the shore. And we could just add a clause in there and say, and no closer than 100 feet
In front of a private.
in front of a private residence. I think that does what you're
That's what.
Yeah.
intending.
Yeah,
I think that there was one fit that fits the Marana, the south end
Yeah.
of Maranacook, I
It-
think it protects everybody and
Yeah.
everybody.
and it tightens up, to you guys' point, it tightens up a condition of the application. Just like I was saying with regards to an applicant, if we leave some of these dimensions. Like we were just talking about, we're kind of going a little bit on the measurement of the swing radiuses. There's gonna be some sites that might only want six moorings. And guess what? They might only need a 5-foot swing radius between them because they're in such a quiet cove or they're in a.
And the depth of the water.
And the depth.
matters here.
Yeah.
Because-
So,
So just to be clear, okay,
So let me read this as I've amended it right here on the
Yep,
fly.
yep,
So mooring field, so that I'm on, chapter 7A, paragraph A. Mooring fields shall be no closer than 25 linear feet to the shore. No closer than 100 linear feet to privately owned property, and no closer than the number of linear feet to be determined to any watercraft. landing.
Yeah, so.
I think it works. The only thing it leaves out, and I think that can be silent, Anthony, is that if it's a private property owner that is granting public permission. That should be in the application.
Yeah, but I think though the intent is that people will be accessing this from a
No,
public.
no, what I'm saying is an applicant might come to you and say, hey, I'm on public property and I'm a little over here, and I'm basically granting them permission to use half my parking lot or whatever. So, but I don't think it needs to be addressed. Anthony. I think the way you got it
There
is
are a
fine.
couple of other locations where the 25-foot
Okay,
is referenced.
okay.
So just put that caveat in.
Yeah, I'll do a search on that. But while I'm searching for it, why don't you guys talk about how close in linear feet? Oh, first of all, I'll tell you what, why don't we check with Barb? Barb, what do you think of that standard? No closer than 100 linear feet to privately owned property. You're gonna have to unmute. Barb, you're muted.
No wonder you were ignoring me. I would prefer that we would have it that we could have up to 200 feet. Because the way you're having it, you would have the mooring that would be in front of the factory and the mooring that would be in front of the mooring field would be in front of the railroad and in
So
front of the
Barb-
factory.
Barb, let me point something out. That would not pass legal muster. You can't prevent people from accessing the water out to 200 feet because that's as far as you can go with the mooring. And so remember, our attorney previously said that I forget if it was
100 and 200 feet, that is.
yeah, that you as the private property owner have first dibs on the first 100 feet, but beyond that, you know, the public does have access to that. So there's gonna have to be a compromise here somewhere between 25 and 200.
Okay. I mean, I'm saying because now you're gonna have 100 feet off of my property and the neighbor's property. And then you'll have basically a 100 strip where boats can moor. Is that correct? Up to the boat ramp?
Well, we haven't decided that yet. We haven't determined the linear feet between the boat landing and a mooring field.
Okay.
Inland Fish and Wildlife may have some info on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think they have some very specific regulations relative to boat launches.
Do you think it's IFNW or is it the
This isn't owned, yeah, it's not owned by anyone, Inland Fish and Wildlife, right?
I think it's owned by, I'm still,
Do we own the boat ramp?
the town?
Yeah.
No, that's a state facility.
Okay.
So, but it's the Bureau of Agriculture, Conservation and something, Forestry, yes.
Okay, yeah.
So if y'all want me to, what I can do is, because we are applying for a state grant to replace that boat ramp at Marina Cook, is I can contact our contact there at that bureau and see if there are state regulations about how close you can moor to
Because I know you
to
can't
a lane.
swim it, you're not supposed to swim it, or things like that.
Yeah.
So I have a-
Not a boat launch, I think they can.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
I've seen it last year.
Barb, did you have something to say?
Yeah, so if boats are moored in front of our property after 100 feet, people can have access to that by walking on the water? How do they get access to the boats that are moored?
They either,
They swim or
they either
they
swim
paddle
or,
out.
or paddle or walk.
But they have to
Okay.
have public access.
Yeah, but they have to have public access. So in other words, they can't get to their boat by crossing your private property.
Or walking along the shoreline, I think. it's-
Yeah. Yeah.
But they can walk right off the end of the boat ramp.
Right.
Where the
But
concrete slabs are straight out.
Walk off Summer Street or
Right.
on the boat launch.
So Dwight, the only other place that I'm seeing a reference to 25 feet is, let me see,
Something G.
mooring standards, yeah.
6G.
A mooring cannot be located closer than 25 feet to the projected property line from the shore.
Where are we?
Yes, and so you think we just need to add that same language from,
It's the one, yeah.
Yeah.
He has the red in it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's, yeah. So up to 25 feet from privately owned, publicly held property. And 100 feet for in front of private property.
Well, you were gonna check with the state, right?
well, he's talking about from the shore and I'm gonna check with the state from the boat launch.
From publicly,
From the boat launch, but how distant, if there is any regulation.
right,
But if there isn't, what's reasonable for keeping protection from?
well, I mean, if you think about it, say you got a 25-foot boat at the dock. That's gonna go out almost 25 feet, well, turning, but. So that would be a minimum in my, I mean,
If it's like my boat, you never get started once you push off. You drift in.
Right, and then you go to get.
I don't know, 50 feet would be reasonable.
well, I think you're in the 40, 50, because I mean, if you look at this drawing that Mike Bennett here. You know, whatever direction, this has been a year. This is, here's the boats, I didn't hear the men's portion, but they got up to Gower. So, you know, anything they get in there, so there's gonna be a little bit of an intrusion, even just where this is. At. You know, if you go by that hinge, that it's.
They're talking about safe mooring spots, as long as, you know, that realistically, in this scenario, there's really not a safe spot for anybody to moor here. So we're just talking about moorings, not necessarily safe.
I think that idea would be sad to think about. You know, like, you want to go. It's deeper.
Well, question, you can't go out more than 200 feet here anyway.
Well,
That's
but
what
it,
that
that's
be.
right in the middle, isn't it? So you're 200 feet from there, 200 feet. That's the
So-
fairway. Yeah.
Hey, guys, let's try to bring some order to the conversation here, because it's sort of all over the map and.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Pictures,
So-
circles and arrows, they get anybody.
So,
The applicant.
so under, section 7, paragraph D. So what I'm hearing you folks say is that we would, eliminate that first sentence altogether,
Which is what?
section 7, paragraph D.
So more
That-
hills maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
We would eliminate that altogether?
Did, we talked about a minimum of 3 boats to establish a mooring field. Originally,
Yes, and definition of mooring.
so. Right, so I'm just throwing it out there that three pin 40 feet from each other would constitute a 1,600-foot minimum for a field if somebody wanted to establish a field. And then what happens to those people that are one mooring or the first 2 that go to put moorings in near a boat landing? How do they apply?
3 would be how much about one minimum?
Yeah, I'm not following your math, I get it.
I was just grinning 40 feet in a square would constitute 1,600 feet or unless you did the area of a triangle.
Oh, 1,600 square.
1,600 square feet.
Yeah, okay, I see.
You know. Yeah, but
That's a minimum.
we talked about establishing a field and 3
boats.
moorings.
But would it we just let the applicant determine how they want to configure the,
No, I think they would have to establish their site plan or
right,
grid.
each one's gonna be a little, so if they have 3 boats, it could be over something that's, 1,000 feet by 20 feet.
Right.
Or, or they could come in and say, we want to do it, 100 by 300 feet, allow them those, or it can't be 300 feet. That could be, if it's,
Big enough.
Right, but that would exceed a minimum if you had to put a minimum area in here. Maybe just strike it, right?
well, no, I think it's covered though, if you say, if you have 3 moorings, then you go apply for.
Yeah, for a mooring field, and then what I was gonna say, back to paragraph D, the second sentence.
Yeah.
It sounded like the consensus was a mooring shall be placed no closer than 40 linear feet from any other mooring.
I mean, that's a reasonable distance. It's, and it's gonna be dictated a little bit by the boat size and that goes on. But getting back to Mike's point here a minute. It's the 3rd page, guys. Yeah, 3rd page. Section 5, where it says the definition D. And that's where, Mike, it does say, so I think, again, getting back, it's in extending 200 feet from the shore into a body of water or a third of the distance to the opposite shore, which is less, with a minimum of 3 watercraft moored within this area. So we are defining it, like you said, in the ordinance as somebody who's gonna set up shop with a minimum of 3.
So let's talk about the opposite then. The next sentence in paragraph D under section 7 says no more than number to be determined, boats may moor in a float. So do you want to set a maximum number or not?
Well, I guess it
Maximum
depends on
number.
the area.
Well, yes, I mean, well, that's what I'm saying is that if you're going to let if someone's going to propose something and you're going to let the council determine it, and it's going to be 40 feet between each mooring, then that in and of itself will limit the number of boats that you can have in there. So, but you probably don't want like these large unsightly fields, perhaps not.
That's
There's probably
the
not.
point you're making, Anthony, it was kind of exactly where I was thinking about adding that statement of it, but I was gonna add that back into section 7. D, under where we've left the X's on the.
Yeah.
On there, but it was gonna be kind of like a footnote, last sentence underneath that last paragraph to say a minimum of. If whatever we want it to be, 30, 40, 50, whatever.
Or you mean a minimum or you mean a maximum?
No, we want a minimum of
Oh, what, the swing?
40 feet.
Oh, well, we've already got that in there. So I think we're just
Is
trying to
that-
determine.
Is that number defined in the ordinance, a minimum of 40 feet swing?
Yeah, I just added a mooring shall be placed no closer than 40 linear feet from any other mooring.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So then the next sentence just addresses if we want to limit the number of boats in a mooring field.
I don't think you need to.
Okay.
I think the applicant needs to show that it can properly be sized and located with the number of that they have. Because the other thing that I think comes into play with a decision maker who's gonna be reviewing these applicants. You get back to that 10% commercial, 10% out of town. You gotta allow a certain number that's always gonna be kind of that overflow, I guess, or I don't wanna call it overflow, but you gotta have an understanding that you might have some growth within your mooring field, or if not, it's gonna be a specific size, and that's what it's gonna be, and that includes the 10%. And you gotta really
Right.
control
Well,
it.
and we already talked about having this 1.5 available parking spots per mooring.
Exactly,
We've already-
there's standards already built into this ordinance that says these are our minimums, we want this type of parking.
Yeah.
We want this swing radius.
Okay, so let's look at a couple of paragraphs down. So let's get crass and talk about money here for a second.
Where are you now?
Paragraph, same section 7, paragraph F is, so when you submit your application, you want a fee with it to cover the cost of processing. What do you folks think is a reasonable fee?
What is the subdivision fee cost right now?
Oh, golly. I don't know. I don't know that off the top of my head. Do you want to tie it to that?
Just.
Oh, just, okay, let me see if I can find that online real quick. Wait,
Yeah, are there any other fees that we charge here?
so this is comparing apples and kumquats here, but when a business applies for a liquor license, because they're going to be serving alcohol, the fee is $250. And well, of course, that's their annual fee.
Right.
No, that's their initial application fee, and then their annual fee, I think is like $25.
That's relatively similar, because this would be the application, fee, the one-time fee.
Yeah.
And then the.
But the application, like, if this is approved, do they get that money?
No, the application fee is meant to cover the administrative costs.
So what, I'm a little bit, I guess I need some clarification.
So you would submit a fee with your application to pay for essentially the staff time that's going to be invested in processing that application, presenting it to the council and so forth. And then annually, you'd have to,
But is that an application for each individual mooring?
No,
Just the
for the
whole-
mooring field.
Yeah.
And then,
you're gonna have.
and then
to
each-
call it a registration.
yeah, and then the registration fee could be like $25.
So if you had 10 people, like, they each pitch in $45 to get a $250 fee.
Yes,
Does that cover the administration fee?
yes, I think so.
And that's a one.
I think that's a one-time fee. I would think that'd be reasonable. But we're not free to play. Okay, so I'll put $250. I'll put $250 in the F and then $25 as the registration, the annual registration fee for water permit. And then lastly, when in this section, when you look down at paragraph I, we know that by law, no fewer than 10% of the mooring field registrants may be no more than 10% of the mooring, let's say, owners may be non-residents of the town of Winthrop. Do we want to put a cap on that
Well,
and we say no fewer than 10%, but no more than X percent?
But how does that influence seasonal residents?
if they're taxpayers.
Well, no,
That's what, see.
yeah, the attorney said strike the tax paying
Well, that's what I see.
thing out, yes. So the balance of registrants must be full-time residents of the town of Winthrop, and he suggested taking out tax paying, so
And why?
of
Because like, just to say, and I'm totally full disclosure.
course, if you're a seasonal resident, wouldn't chances are that you're already living on the water?
That's what I was. gonna
Yeah, but
say.
you have islands that people need to get to. That's the other thing.
Yeah, but they're not gonna need a mooring in a public mooring field, though.
They may, like, right now,
You're just assuming.
If they don't have- they don't have like anything on the mainland.
Not assuming that, like,
They're either gonna rent a slip or they're gonna need a mooring.
or they, if they're going from their island into town, then aren't they using a public slip or dock or something?
It's
But they,
it's March 22nd, those are all gone,
what's going,
all slips are already.
yeah. Well, I guess. What if they have property in town and property on the island? And sometimes they leave their boat in town for a few nights and, they're not like living on the island all summer.
I think you're trying to find the exception that proves the rule, so, I mean, I would think that those instances are gonna be so.
So,
Oh.
no, I am referring, but I'm not the only one, and so, right now, I don't have that need, but there may be a time when I do, or there may be a time when someone else does, but I am not a resident, I am a taxpayer. So full disclosure, yes.
Well,
I think there are others in
well,
that situation as well.
yes, but do understand that the 10%, no fewer than 10% standard, that's state law. So,
Right, that's good, but what?
But
you
what
wanna
defines,
cap-
what defines a non-resident or however is it?
where do you register your car?
Okay. Well, you have. Where you vote,
Yeah.
Yes, where you vote.
right. So.
Where do you have your homestead
I guess-
exemption?
Right.
Yes, once you guys decide how many you're gonna have for space, then you can figure out you're gonna be 10%
So-
minimal,
so-
or what your maximum. space-
Well, it's a matter of, are you trying to reserve spaces for town residents?
You should, you
Yes.
can vote.
And so if you have no fewer than 10% for non-residents, because that's state law, then you may want, if you're trying to maximize the number, you might say no more than 15%.
Then I propose 15% in the verbiage.
Okay, what do the rest of you think?
It's fair, I mean.
Yeah.
up to
10, it leaves it at 10, less than 10%,
You're really
to
hinging,
maximum of 15%
hinging on.
for
one
non-
vote or two votes.
defined individuals that are not associated with that.
Yep. Go 15.
So if you go 15, you have 10 moorings, 1.5 more.
It's
Round.
Yeah,
No doubt. Yeah, I.
Well, but if you have, yeah. Okay. Well,
The applicant's issue.
yeah, they decide among themselves who's gonna.
We just have to give them guidance and they have that 15%, right? And then they propose how many warrants they want.
yeah, or you
And
can,
there'll be a footnote in the ordinance, and it'll say, any of these ordinance that need to be reconsidered shall be assessed at the applicant and approval process time. You know, because somebody might come, you know, I'm gonna play the devil's advocate, that you got somebody that comes in and they're out of the 10 moorings that can fit in the application, 8 of them are non-residents.
Yeah, no, that's not good. No.
It
Unless there's-
will get denied at the application.
Except-
It certainly will, but 15%.
Yeah, or during the annual registration process.
But what happens in, let's just say, what
Alright.
happens if, say, a boat landing, not this one, or a mooring field, not this one, on Anabasco
Right,
has people that are trying to get to their islands,
yeah.
but not people, other people don't care about it, and how do you deal with that, like,
I was just trying to
I mean-
help you with that,
right?
that's what I was just trying to help you with.
Okay.
Is the applicant coming with 8 people that are your situation? Just because they might live on 10 islands up here and they need a mooring fee. So the consideration of it
Is that?
is
where the
going to
mooring
be
field
stuffed.
Would be built. for
Will
that?
not happen if we say 15% in a case like I'm over exaggerating.
Can you say residents take precedence over?
Well, that's what you're saying by
That's what we're
saying,
saying.
by saying no more than or no fewer than.
What if you have, I mean, this isn't the situation down here, this, everybody, those are all full, and I think most of them are residents, right? All of them?
No,
no,
there's,
there's, I don't know who we're gonna be returning, but I think it was maybe 12.
Depending on the application down
And then I
here,
think there's one.
they can probably take twice as many boats that are there. With the grid. that you
So to
can-
be honest, I don't really, it's important, but I'm just thinking about other people that might be in the same situation.
Well, we gotta put a standard in there,
Right, but can you?
or not, I mean, you could just,
10%, and outside of that, residents have first priority.
but that's what you're doing, Lynn, when you say that, and no more than 15%.
But you're not putting
The ramp,
a number on, so say only 6 residents, so 6 out of 10 are applied. That's okay, still, they're gonna go 100, you know,
correct.
if you only have 6 residents and you have 4 moorings extra.
That's where the. deep
Why couldn't you fill those with people that own property, but if there are 9 residents that, they get preference, they get first.
I think that's how it works right now, and in the state statute, it talks about how 10% must be offered to non-residents, and the remainder goes dibs on the residents. Anybody who is after that.
Yeah, because it says no fewer than, so.
Would allow.
I don't know, I'm a little, I guess I'm a little.
Would you prefer to strike that last line, the balance of registrants must be full-time?
Well,
over there, but over on.
I think Linda, you're
what if they're,
You're only gonna get a 50-foot swath.
so property owner, why did you want to scratch that?
Because the attorney says to.
But what?
That's why.
It must be legal in nature. I mean, it's not, he's looking at it from a legal standpoint. So it's not arbitrary because he just doesn't think that's right. It must be
But
legal.
but taxpayers are capture both residents and non-residents, right?
Well, because, right, you might be a resident, but you're not paying property taxes because, I mean, not directly, because you're paying rent as opposed to a
Right,
mortgage
but
and
if you're a
taxes.
property owner and you're not a resident, you're paying more than somebody who's paying rent.
But Lynn, the purpose of the purpose of that is to try to give preference to residents. So it's a matter among this committee. Do you want to give preference to residents or not?
Yeah. I do, but
Okay.
I also, is there some way to be flexible so that if there's extra moorings,
I think
I-
it should be written in consideration.
I think one of the dangers in writing ordinances is if you allow too much flexibility, then you weaken the ordinance. I mean, it's meant to be some rules that so that it's not arbitrary in determining who gets the mooring and who doesn't.
So Lynn, are you worried about the wording, the balance of registrants must be full-time residents of the town of Winthrop?
yeah, I guess mostly it's the islands that I'm thinking about. There's really only one island on.
When you
the
say
Winthrop
full-time
end.
So one possible consideration then might be the way that we kind of had said 10%, no fewer than 10%.
Right.
And then we were gonna put a cap on it
Right.
at 15. And then we said that we were looking at if we were looking at that site down there, it would be about, let's call it two more sites.
Okay,
Out of that site that would have to, that would make up that 15%.
2 out of the,
There'd be two sites sitting on that 12 site mooring field that would go to
right.
non-residents.
But you don't
So,
want people coming
But
in.
do you think that would need to be, my question is, do you think there needs to be 4?
I don't
sites
know.
down there?
I mean,
5?
no, I don't think so.
But let's look,
So is it 3?
So let's think about this. Okay, there's one island.
the wait list may cover it.
I think that's.
Because you might be,
The wait list talks about non-resident wishes to moor
Some of them
watercraft
have
for principal use, which is not commercial, less than 10% of the moorings that currently assigned to person fitting this description. The next mooring available. shall be assigned to the
there you go.
Yeah,
There it is.
got yeah, everybody.
There you go.
So we already got it. We knew that.
But, okay, say that.
So it says if a wait list on the next page, if a non-resident wishes to moor a watercraft, the principal use of which is non-commercial and less than 10% of the moorings that currently assigned to persons fitting this description, the next mooring available shall be assigned to the first person on the list. And that's state law.
If
Kind
none
of
of
thing.
them
I think that's fair.
currently assigned.
Since it's state law, I would agree.
So with that wording in there, I don't think you need a cap, Anthony.
No, so just, we have to do a minimum of 10%.
Minimum of 10%, call it
Okay.
good,
Right?
no cap.
We almost done.
Yes, actually.
Okay.
So here's, the last question to be answered tonight about the ordinance is who serves as the appellate body?
I propose town manager.
That's the, where are we now?
I think that's a reasonable approach.
Oh, perfect.
I would propose the town council.
So we got the harbor master making.
Those yahoos, Mike?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you sit with them, don't you? We didn't count them.
Guilty by association.
Potential flip side, potential flip side.
Valid question.
That's hurt.
Why,
It's hurtful that you wouldn't trust the town manager.
I mean, let me get,
why does it have to go beyond the harbor?
Well, because if the harbor master makes a decision that somebody disagrees with, there needs to be some sort of appellate process beyond just appealing to, I mean, you could always appeal to Superior Court, but of course that requires a lot more time and money.
the piece that, speaking of Superior Court comment that Anthony just made, the piece that I kind of thought through with regards to recommending town manager. And Dwight and I, and even Matt and I had a kind of a brief conversation around this. Is that it is really, Mike, and it's a great question you brought up, it's a check on the code enforcement. individual.
Yeah.
Right, so that's why that is, but even it creates an appeal process for the resident, the applicant. So that's the second positive thing that it does, it sets that process. And then the other thing that was really strong consideration was the fact that regardless of the decision that we're gonna say in this case, town manager makes, whether it's faux or for, can still be brought up through legality through Supreme Court process. And if an applicant says, I've been filed, or even if the town says, no, I'm right, and the applicant's saying no, or vice versa, it's gonna go to a legal higher
Yeah,
authority.
My only thought process was, I've been fouled, it goes to Anthony, he denies it, now I've been double fouled. At least if it goes to the town council, there's a 7-person vote that,
But you can.
But
where there's a hearing.
They'll take how many years to get through that?
It doesn't.
They can get on the agenda quick now.
Do they?
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
But I mean, no, we don't know who the next candidate's gonna be.
Yeah, I mean, don't think about
But you don't know
don't
who
think
the
about the
next-
person, think about the position.
Yeah, that's right, and I am.
It's the authority.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
No, and when I say the position, town manager, zoning board,
Oh,
town council,
Okay.
don't think about the individual serving in
Right.
those posts now. Think about the,
that's all.
so Mike, so just for clarity's sake, I mean, Mike does, I think, raise a valid point. If it goes to the town manager, you have one person deciding. If it goes to the zoning board of appeals, you have 5 people deciding. If it goes to the town council, you have 7 people deciding.
Right, at least there is a discussion process and then a vote, or a motion and then a vote. And it's relatively quick.
So what is this gonna, help me out here, what's the appeal?
If we weren't gonna
Appeal what?
Well, any decision that the harbor master makes in enforcing the ordinance, someone may disagree with and they may appeal. And let's say the harbor master finds that 2 moorings are 30 feet apart.
Okay.
And he cites someone or says, you're gonna have to move this mooring. And then they appeal that.
Anthony, do we have any examples where we currently appeal and it goes either directly to you to make that decision or it goes directly to the town council to make that decision?
That's a good question, Matt. So to the town manager, I think it would only be if it's internal in nature.
They've already got a process.
The town council, I don't know that I can think of anything where an appeal goes to I guess the town council would also be if it were an internal matter.
Yeah, I tend to actually lean back towards the zoning board only because they already have a working relationship with the code board. I know obviously he works for you.
Yeah.
But they have a working relationship from a board and an employee perspective. And they do this, monthly or what have you. There's already an established procedure for them to do and to receive these things. And so
But they're appointed, not elected.
They are appointed.
Yeah, and I think that it should be the people of the town that vote in the people on the council who make that decision to hear that, not somebody that's appointed.
I think I think you're gonna have to give some leeway to the harbor master to your point, somebody cited for saying a 30-foot, and you can say, well, my justification is my boat's smaller, right? And this is the reason why this is supposed to be. I think that something, we give the harbor master a shot and make the right decision. But I know you guys are gonna put something in place, but I don't know how many appeals you're gonna get.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully these would be very few and far between. In
The
fact,
guy's boat is sunk, and you guys have moved it for the last.
Right,
month
that's.
and a half.
yeah.
That,
And so for-
it's violating state law,
State law, obviously.
and we kinda need to get some help.
And so for example, all of the appeals that the zoning board of appeals has heard over the last 30-something years have all been related to they've all been variances. There's been no appeals of CEO or planning board decisions that have gone to that body.
What
What if someone wanted to question their tax bill?
There is a process for
So what
that.
is that?
That's the Board of Assessment Review.
I just think it's important that. With taking you out of the picture, I don't know if it's gonna be beneficial to this, just to have the town manager be able to single-handedly make that decision.
I don't feel strongly about any of the three options that you have before you.
The second one that I can live with, if, if there's opposition against, having a single point of person like the town manager is, again, it's for the same reason for me, is that then I would go down to the next authoritative body that already handled something similar. And that's the zoning board. That's the zoning ordinance board. They handle this, according to Anthony, you correct me if I'm wrong. They handle the appeals
Well,
process.
yeah, but at the moment, their scope is very limited. I mean,
And I understand that, and I understand, but that is the next council authority group that I see that has a process that's already established, so why rebuild the process? Because again, the finding of the decision-making that you're asking that authority to do is to say, did the code enforcement officer not assess the ordinance effectively and correctly and equitably with the decisions that he's made over the last 10 years or whatever, so it's a black and white little case, but somebody's got to do it. And then if that applicant feels they've still been wronged,
Then can they go to the town council?
no, then they would go to Superior Court.
I think like they're not elected for every member. And that's what will happen, is they'll be unappointed and.
So
But is the due,
let me play devil's advocate though, Sandy. That's true of almost every other decision that's made, like you go to the planning board, they're not elected.
I understand.
You
that.
go, I mean, you would,
I've dealt with all of them.
yeah,
So
but
if you're appointed, and that has been thrown in my face, with our planning board here. I do not feel that the situation that is going to be volatile if it comes to that, because nobody is happy about this on the side. We are creating so many rules to follow. You need to have the people that are elected by the people in this community handling those decisions, not people who are appointed to a position.
but again, I would just argue, we already entrust them with hearing appeals of other matters.
I think we've shown that we have areas to improve in our community, and I don't think that we should start this process, which is already volatile. Putting it in the hands of people.
but I disagree that it's volatile. The situation on that
Order.
Yeah, please.
is gonna be based
We have a
on,
section for public comment later.
Yeah.
So can we
Yeah.
flesh out the committee business or?
Yeah. So what's the pleasure of this committee?
I think the zoning board is the way to go. I think that's truly I think that's the path of least resistance when it comes to this process. There's one set in place, they already do it. And I don't think that would be actually political. I think that's gonna be relatively, benign. They're gonna get a list of things. They're gonna say, did the code enforcement officer do their job? If the answer is yes, then it's done. If the answer is no, then they'll reverse the decision. I mean, I think that's simple. They don't have to be elected again, they don't have to be happy again, and they don't have to deal with that kind of stuff, so they truly can look at the black and white.
the testament is in this ordinance document.
Yeah, I mean, we're here today.
This document has to allow that decision making to be very easy.
Well, exactly, and I think we're drafting a mooring field ordinance because it did go through a political process.
I agree.
So let's take it out, but put it in the zone.
So we've gone from town manager back to Board of Appeals and briefly chatted about town council, so I can live with the Board of Appeals.
I can live with the Board of Appeals.
I can live with it, but I prefer the council.
I can go with it,
Okay, all right, so. Here's where I think that we are right now. What I'll do is tomorrow, I'll go through this. And I'm gonna just accept all the changes, I left all the stuff that was deleted in there just in case we wanted to go back and revisit that and consider it, but I think we're beyond that point now. So I'll go back and I'll accept all the changes. I have asked just now IFNW to please respond to our question about the non-resident commercial boats. I will ask the state about if there are restrictions on how close a mooring can be to a public launch. And other than that, I think we're there. And so the question for the next meeting would be, do we want like one last bite at this apple to review it? Or the other option is that we could publicize a public hearing where we have the public come and share their input with you guys that may cause you to go back and revisit
Yeah, probably.
some issues in here.
Let's tweak it once more.
You want to tweak it once?
Yeah, just to make sure, because we've got red line strikeout right now, let's get a
Yeah.
clean final copy.
Okay,
And then, so next, it's March, so April, so in May, we're ready to go to public comments.
Yeah.
Is that what we're looking at?
yeah. And then, we could get it, knock on wood,
June?
present it to the council in June. Unless you hear something in the public hearing that causes you want to revisit
And
something.
that is 2 months ahead of our mandate.
Yeah.
It's, just a formality question. Somebody else knows it better than I, but I'll ask the question is. Does it have to go to public
Yes.
review again?
So what I would say is, to Sandy's point,
So
we
if
need,
the answer is yes, I'm good with that.
well, there's a legal and a political answer.
But my second real question though, is I'll put the real one out, is if it has to go to public. Can it also, is it then gonna go to public when it goes to council?
Yes, it is. And
So this is where I was going. I don't think we need to go to public now. We do I like your suggestion, Dwight. Let's get a final draft.
Well, we have a mission, don't we have a mission?
So-
The only problem with that is the council's not gonna change it, they're gonna vote yes or no.
They have-
That's right.
I'm asking, is the council gonna have a public process during their review?
yes,
Are they gonna call for the same?
Matt, let me talk.
What I'm trying to prevent is, we have a public process, we hear the good public process. We hear the good input, we hear everybody's statements. It goes to council and they look at it and they mull it and they go, oh. We want to go to public process too, because maybe we think other people from
But-
away in the winter.
Matt,
here in the
Matt, let me talk here.
You know, so I'm
Matt.
just trying to prevent excessive, but you go ahead, Anthony, you got the mic.
Thank you. So legally, there has to be a public hearing when it goes to the
That I
council.
completely understand.
And the council has, as Roy just mentioned, committed that either they are going to vote it in with no changes, or they're going to send it to the voters to decide in November. So I think, to Sandy's point, given the volatility of this issue, I think we would be smart
I agree.
to allow the public to have as much input in this as they want. And maybe they're going to tell you something compelling that will cause you to revisit and change your mind about something. And so,
I think that's fair.
and so what the council is going to go through is a legal process with their hearing. What we're going to go through is almost a political process where we're trying to let people know they've been heard.
Well, we can say, hey, we put it out there, we did that piece. There should be less
Don't wanna read.
option or less.
I don't need to hear. I don't need to hear.
Controversy.
Yeah.
With-
The body has been given some separate times.
Yeah, well, one more thing, Sandy, before we yield the floor to you. So I don't think that we can give the public too much opportunity to deal with this, given the
I
volatility.
agree with as many as there needs to be, required.
Mrs. Steele.
So when we're talking about that, I'm hearing saying like we're gonna do a final draft.
We're gonna do a final draft of a draft that we will submit to the council for final.
But what I'm saying is
authorization.
that you're doing your final draft with that. And however you choose to do it, you choose to do it. But there are so many opinions in this town.
This is why we're gonna do a public process right now, before we give it to the council.
Let me finish.
The ad hoc mooring committee doesn't say we have to go to public. It just says,
But we want to.
But we're going,
but it says the council will consider either adopting the committee's recommendations as presented or calling for a special referendum election for voters. to consider.
Yeah, we do, Dwight is correct. We don't have to. I'm saying we should.
I agree.
we're going to,
Anthony, can I ask you? What would the process be? If we talk about something, so you go back and you redo this. And then you bring it back to us to review,
So I will send you an updated copy tomorrow.
okay,
And then, we'll wait to hear from the state on the 2 questions we have for them. And then we'll plug that in there. As soon as those get plugged in, I'll send it to you again. We will meet on April the 17th.
Okay.
You'll get a final look at this, just make sure everything is in order as far as you're concerned. Then we'll have at our May meeting, we'll publicize it and we'll do a good job of doing that. And invite the public to come and give their input. And as soon as it's ready, we won't wait. I mean, as soon as it's ready, we'll post it online and so that people can look at it ahead of time. So they can come to the May meeting prepared to speak to
and
it.
then in June, we present.
And then in June, you'll present it to the town council.
Get out what I was trying to.
Yes,
say.
ma'am.
When you have that public hearing, I think we do need to put it out there so the community understands that there's a draft finalized. That this is your opportunity to come, hear it, understand it, encourage them to read it. But then let us have that meeting so that everyone has the opportunity to express.
Yes.
And then, at that point, if people choose not to come that night, they choose not to come.
Is that a
So-
public meeting?
so-
Public comment period? I think you'll.
It'll be, I mean, and
Maybe not.
yeah, in essence, it will be a public hearing. Your job that night will be to listen.
Right,
And trust me, Sandy, not my first rodeo, so we're gonna do a good
I
job.
just feel like
Yeah.
For the community on either side of this battle.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is that they're not heard.
I don't think I don't think that sentiment is around any longer.
Yeah,
And I think that,
but these are up and out.
yeah, and I don't think this is nearly the hot button issue it was
No.
when I got here in June.
and the survey showed a lot
Yeah.
of that,
Yes.
of what people.
And I think people are gonna be satisfied. I mean, I expect people are gonna be satisfied with the work that their neighbors have done on this.
I think so too.
So, anyway.
Awesome.
All
Are there
right,
any motions we have to make?
I
yes,
think-
to adjourn.
Okay, you said there needs to be 3 votes to create a mooring field. What happens if 1 or 2 votes flops a mooring in something, like say?
It's not a public mooring field.
they're wild cowboys.
So they can do that.
Well, they would have to apply for a mooring field even with 1 vote. Wouldn't they?
No, because under our definitions, you have to have a minimum of 3 to constitute a mooring field.
Okay, so the mooring goes in and the mooring goes in, what's the
So
consequence? None?
nothing.
Yeah.
So let's just say this scenario.
It's at,
Becomes a-
Until we've got the cops here.
right. So in that regard, it would be like the rules that we're operating under now, right?
Yeah,
Then the one guy.
There were 2.
Advertised it.
All right.
there were 2, then there was 3.
But somebody, it could affect somebody though, if they have a couple of jet skis afloat,
Right.
right? So
They got
private
it.
property owners have to be cognizant that if they put that third mooring out.
Well,
But
but
that's-
remember, I have to have public access.
Correct, they're
Private people can do what they
Okay.
want.
they're
So
private.
they can have 10.
Yeah.
10
They can, yeah, because remember, we made a conscious decision based on the survey that we were not gonna regulate private moorings.
Each other.
Anyway. Is there a motion to adjourn? All right, all in favor? Good night, Barb.